How can the stadium be only 14% full for a cup final?
The scorer of the winning goal was on loan from the losing team.
As a president of the Latvian Virslīga, I'm not only thinking about the Baltic League, I'm fighting for it.
Hello, and welcome to The Sweeper, the World Football podcast made in association with FIFA Plus. I'm Lee Wingate.
And I'm Paul Watson.
And this is a Latvia special. We've got the story of the cup final between Riga FC and Auda FK, plus their alleged shady relationship coming up later on. But first, in part one, I met the president of the Virslīga, Latvia's higher league, Maksims Krivunecs, in Riga, and asked him what there is to love about Latvian football, why so many former champions go bust, and what he thinks about the idea of a Baltic League.
Maksims, it's great to be here with you in Riga. I've wanted to come for a long time, and I'm finally here. You're the president of the Virslīga, the higher league in English. Can you sell the Virslīga to our international audience? We've got ground toppers, people that would love to potentially come to Latvia. What makes Latvian football special?
Lee, first of all, welcome to Riga. I'm happy to host you here. Answering your question, I would separate like a general audience and ground hoppers, because Virslīga for the ground hoppers is a really nice place to come. We have different stadiums, different locations, different clubs with a not probably big heritage, because the oldest one is more than a decade years old. But internationally, I would say the most interesting one is to follow young players, as we are the youngest league in Europe in terms of the average age, 23.4 years. We have 36 nations playing in Virslīga, so a lot of fans, like from Japan, for example, they love to follow their players playing in Europe. And we have audience from 3,000 subscribers from Brazil. We see that they're watching the games, probably relatives, probably some for betting purposes, right? Because football is different in every country, and I think it's interesting to follow it. But I wouldn't be like flying in the skies and saying that Virslīga is popular amongst. No, first of all, Virslīga is for Latvian audience, because it's a local football, and people love. There is a big majority of the fans that love local football.
Latvia probably is one of the smaller leagues on the European continent. What challenges come with trying to grow the profile, both domestically for that Latvian audience, but also internationally as well?
Of course, first of all, it's financial resources. As for any league, domestic TV rights is the main driver, the main engine for the league development and for the club's development. Mm-hmm. We have a very small market. We don't have a media market big enough to sell. So Virslīga, we produce our games on our own with the help of our partners, and we distribute them. And that's why we're probably limited in the financial resources. And financial resources, it's your, let's say the budget is the amount of work you can do. It's not only like we want to say sell for the sake of increasing the revenues. No, it's amount of work that we can do. It's the quality that we can produce for the broadcasters, for the fans. And I would say this is the biggest challenge, because we have a lot of ideas that we want to do. We're making a small steps, but in the right direction. We are developing digital ecosystem. We are well known in Europe now in terms of what we do as a league, as operations, because we have and the let's say app, fantasy league. We license in Football Manager. We have established partners in data like Huddle, Opta. We have many things that what we do. But of course, we would love to do more. And of course, human resources would like to have more people that we can produce interesting content for the fans.
So finances seem like the big challenge then. I wanted to ask you about a YouTube video that I saw on a channel called Route to None Football, and it was explaining that 5 of the 9 Latvian post-independent champions have gone bankrupt or out of business. They no longer exist. They are Daugava, Liepājas, Metalurgs, Skonto Riga, Spartaks, Jomala, and Ventspils. Why have so many Latvian clubs, big Latvian clubs, struggled to continue to exist? And is this something that you're still worried about in the current landscape?
Well, the situation is much better than it was, but the problem is that football is mainly financed from the private equity, from the private funds. So all these clubs went gone because they had experience, the owners of these clubs experience financial problems in their main businesses, right? It's probably the main reason when, because football is, it's a passion, it's a hobby for these people, and we are happy to have them that. And now people are still investing in local football, but the main source is their own private funds. It's not the TV market, it's not the sponsorship, it's not municipality or the government, which is another challenge actually for local football, because if you even compare to our neighbors in Lithuania, municipality plays a very important role in financing their local clubs, because local clubs, it's a part of the community, it's their local heritage. It's not the case in Latvia, and we are step by step also trying to change that. So these all, let's say, dying champions, yes, we are afraid of this situation because it's a heritage. We want to have the clubs that are 100 years old, like, I don't know, in Ireland, we have Shamrock Rovers, Bohemians, and, you know, you go to the Dublin Derby and there are 33,000 people going. It's also part of the heritage that you need to build. It takes time. And luckily we have for the last 10 years a big Riga derby, like two clubs came in with wealthy owners, with a strategy, with good management. So, and of course we want to have more of these clubs. And luckily now clubs are planning, their planning horizon went from 1 year to 3 and maybe even 5 years. So you can see from the players' contract that previously 10 years ago it was mainly 1-2 years player contracts, because clubs were not sure whether for the next season they will have funds to continue their operations. So mainly that was the case. Of course, with the increase of the UEFA club competitions money, with the solidarity that is coming from UEFA, so with better sponsorship, with money coming in from betting market, so leagues operations already improved. So now everybody can plan for a longer period.
When you have clubs that are younger, like RFS or Riga FC, because they are young, is it hard to build fan bases? Because of course that takes time, and if football fans have attached themselves to a club that's gone out of business, do you find that is a challenge?
Absolutely, absolutely. I remember as a co-founder of RFS, and actually the fans was one of the main goals, how we can attract people, how we can make them interested in our brand, because it's a new club coming in and new people, and of course because of what you mentioned about the skepticism about the new clubs. Everybody says, it's a club for a few years and then it's gone. So luckily we proved that it's a club with a heritage, that they want to build this heritage and to build the community around it. And it takes time, absolutely, because people were not buying it right away. They need to see what you're going to do, what's the strategy, and of course you need to respect your fan base. What I see in a smaller markets, when money coming from the fans is less than 1% of the budget, and we mean the ticketing, merchandise and all these things. Actually, fans are paying for everything in football, right? So the broadcasting rights is the fans paying, sponsorship, giving money to football because sponsors are willing fans to buy their products. So by the end of the day, this huge inflation, huge commercialization of football, which I honestly don't support, but it's coming from the fans' pocket, which is sad. You see like the prices for the World Cup tickets. It's crazy. So, but in Latvia, as I mentioned, we have private equity, private money, and fans is just less than 1%. So some clubs that just don't think about that. So how to improve the experience at the stadium, how to improve the experience in the social media, so the fans becoming not like a 1%, but in a few years maybe 5% of your budget will come in, because fans genuinely love what you're doing. They're ready to buy the tickets for a higher price, they're ready to buy your merch, they're happy to sponsor you, right? So it takes time, and it's also a big challenge, but also infrastructure. All our clubs, almost all the clubs, their infrastructure is municipality infrastructure. So they don't own it. Sometimes they need to relocate to different places because there are some renovation works, or there is a concert happening at this. And it's also, you need to have your home to build a stable fan base, because they know they can come, they know what to expect, they know the level of service, catering, and all the other attractions and so on. So it takes time, but luckily our clubs are starting doing more during at the games, and also in the digital area.
Can you give us a few financial benchmarks for the Virslīga? For example, what would an average match ticket cost at the moment? What would a player earn on average per year?
Range is a big one, right? So you can say, because we have let's say two big clubs, three I would say big clubs, with more or less the same budgets. We have then lower teams, and we have then if we take Euro Club Index that I usually using for to compare the clubs and the leagues. So we have big four and then low tail with a lower index. So in this index and with the lower in this tail, there might be completely different numbers. So the price of the ticket would be around five euros, right? Which is completely affordable, right, for the general audience. The player salary for the local international, it might be from 3,000 to maybe 10,000 euros per month net. For the foreign player, not international, but good foreign player, it might be also from maybe 5, because in order to attract a better foreign player that is better, because you take a foreign player only if you cannot find on the local market, right? So you need to add something. It might be from 5,000, and then on average it might go to 10, maybe 15. We had some outliers, right? So really good players that were earning maybe like even more, but I would say it's more outlier. So this is the range. For the young players, of course, starting fees, starting salary might be around 800, then moving to 1,000 and a half, and then 2. So it depends on how the player progresses and of course the results.
It's really interesting to hear that, because of course people that watch big money football, they're used to talking about player contracts which are 100,000 euro a week or whatever, and it's good to see the financial realities of a league like the Virslīga, just so people can sort of understand what that reality is, I think.
Yeah, you see that last year RFS beat Ajax with a 5 million budget.
Actually, I think we quoted you on a pod last year because you wrote to us something, or you posted on Twitter something along the lines of RFS being in the Europa League, they had like 1% of Manchester United or the top team's budget, or maybe even less, or something like that. And yet, a win against Ajax, a draw against Galatasaray, do they go down as some of Latvian football's greatest achievements at club level?
Absolutely. We played once in Europa League in 2009-2010 season. Our FK Ventspils, also legendary club, they managed. At that time, there were group stages, right? There were 6 games, so they managed to play 3 draws and 3 defeats, so taking 3 points. But the opponents were really nice, the really strong ones. So they drew against Sporting, Hertha, and Herenveen. So now RFS got 5 points with a victory. So it's the first victory in UEFA club competitions against Ajax, so legendary club, and of course draws against Anderlecht, draws against Galatasaray. Incredible emotions, people crying at the stadium. So you can see how it's important is it. And of course, in European football, I always say dream is the most important engine. So that's why I'm against all the super leagues and all the reforms of the Champions League with changing access. You need to keep the dream. Even if Champions League seems impossible, and you saw last year Slovan Bratislava with a round budget, I think their budget around 18 million. So our FC Riga had the budget of 13, 15 at one point in time. So you see, more or less, we can be there sometime in the future with building coefficient 0 points for them, right? So the gap is increasing, but it doesn't mean that you cannot dream, that you don't want to be there and you don't want to experience this. Absolutely, you want to. And Europa League for us, it was, as RFS management called for them, it was a magic season. And I think for all the fans, and even general Latvian fan, it was a magic season to see these teams, legendary teams playing on Latvian soil. All the bars are filled with the fans. It's just amazing. It's a festival, it's a football festival, absolutely.
I can imagine that when Galatasaray came to town, they're a very passionate bunch, the Turkish fans. I can imagine in a quaint, lovely little city like Riga, that was quite some experience.
Yeah, it was amazing. First of all, they were really happy before the game, and they were not so happy after the game. We had even some small incident on the streets, but we have a long history with the Turkish teams at a national team level when we won Turkey in the playoffs to proceed to the Euro 2004, and of course RFS scoring 2 and equalizing, playing Galatasaray. It was amazing for the local fans, and of course quite a disappointment for local ones. But actually they were really happy after we beat Ajax, and they were writing on the social media thank you, because it helped them.
I can imagine. The UEFA Conference League is one of our biggest loves on the pod. Me and Paul are always saying how it's our favourite competition. As the president of a smaller European league, is this sort of is it a gift? Is it that kind of thing that keeps dreams alive? How much do you love the UEFA Conference League?
I think this is a brilliant idea. It gives opportunity for smaller teams coming like from our competitions, similar size, to experience European football, to have a more interesting seasons. It's also quite challenging to play within the week as well, European games. So it's also, of course, influencing the local domestic competitions. But I think it's a brilliant idea, although that still the winners of this competition are quite big clubs, and it's difficult to compete with them. You see, we played against Fiorentina, Başakşehir, Hearts. These are big teams for us, right? Still, but it's great experience. I would say that the distribution model of the European money is not the perfect one, and I think that there's a big problem. The gap is widening between the clubs, and we actually, the current system promotes that. We distribute 3+ billion to Champions League clubs, to 32 clubs, now 36, and then we distribute 700 million to all others clubs in Europa League and Conference League together. It's like 72 clubs, and we distribute another small portion of 4% as a participating clubs is 3% for the qualification, and then 4% solidarity for all other clubs, which to my mind is a really low number to not even to decrease the gap, not to make the gap wider, right? This is the goal, to preserve this gap. And but in general, of course, it's a brilliant idea. We need to keep it on, but we need to keep the dream alive, as I said. So all the clubs in Conference League and Europa League, they need to have a chance and a dream to promote further and to compete.
What about the gap internally within Latvia? So have you noticed that since RFS and Riga FC have been playing in UEFA competitions and been getting money as a result, it's been creating a little bit of a chasm within the Latvian higher league?
So I would say for us it's not a problem, because money received in final stages, right, as RFS played last year in Europa League, league stage, and they got 4.5 or plus million. So they're not increasing the budget by this sum. It's just as I mentioned, all the financial burden is on the owner's shoulders. So they just calculated as the next year it will be cheaper for them to finance the operations of the clubs by not increasing. But it's not the case in many countries. If you take Dinamo Zagreb, Olympiacos, Slovan Bratislava, in this kind of middle leagues, of course the clubs are competing for the Champions League in these regions, or Ludogorets in Bulgaria, right? So they will definitely receive the money from the Champions League, and they will invest maybe 50%, maybe 70%, or maybe 30%, but they will definitely increase their budget to compete, because this is already a model, this is operational model. They calculate this money into their model, and that's the problem when they don't reach these stages, right? This is where the trouble starts. So but you will see in these competitions, Ludogorets already, I don't know, 11, 12 consecutive titles. Dinamo Zagreb winning like 90% of the all championships in the last 20 or 30 years. The same situation in Greece and many other countries. So I think it's a big problem of European football, a big gap between the big clubs and the small clubs, and of course it distorts domestic competitions, this distribution. I would say of course we understand that the big clubs bring money to European football, but whether it's a fair distribution, I don't think so. Why Premier League is so good? Because, well, when they formed the Premier League in 1992, they made it centrally, and they distributed with the best ratio. So the last teams receiving 100 million pounds, and the first team would receive, I don't know, 140 or 150. So the gap is the lowest gap among top 5 leagues is in Premier League, right? That's why where the small teams can compete, they can bring fantastic players, and you will see like now Sunderland are promoted there in the top 3. So this is the thing what should be also replicated in European football. The more you distribute to smaller clubs, or let's say medium clubs, the more competitive they will become, and the more interesting the competition will be, and the more money will be coming from sponsorship and the broadcasting. But it's politics, it's difficult to do this. Let's try.
Final question, and this is the one that I've been looking forward to asking you the most. We've talked a lot on the pod about cross-border leagues and the pros and cons thereof. Obviously, in certain places within Europe, it's not going to work. In the Balkan countries, for example, because of the geopolitics. In Belgium and the Netherlands, a lot has been made of a Benelux league, but ultimately those are quite strong standalone products as well. The most realistic prospect, and one that would seem to promote the countries that are participating, would be a Baltic cross-border league. Could you imagine that?
Not only imagine, I'm working hard to do this because I'm managing the league for 8 years. I've been evaluating all possible and formats and strategies how to develop the league. And the thing is, I should make a disclaimer. I'm not the biggest fan of cross-border competition, right? If you can do it locally and you can improve your football, you should do it locally because it's a national heritage. But at the situation where you need to compete with others, because football is universal, it's okay. You can remain the same level in your domestic league, but expect that your clubs will not do really good on the European stage, or your national team will not do or good on the international stage. Because football, you're not only competing domestically, you're competing internationally, and I see perfectly what is happening with the different leagues. I know all the leagues in Europe. I know their management, I know their contracts, what is happening, what the distribution, and there are some leagues that are distributing 10 million every season to their clubs. It means 10 million every year. In 10 years is 100 million. So they're 100 million better off clubs than our clubs. So in order to compete, in order not to this gap increasing all the time, we need to go cross-border for the Baltics, and it's perfect place for this, let's say, experiment. Actually, it's happening already in women football, right there, Northern Ireland and Ireland. So it's already there. So, and it will be more and more because while playing in the smaller market like Latvia, we are 1.6 million, going cross-border, creating a format that keeps all UEFA club competitions spots for our clubs, creating 3 stages competition where you have local stage, domestic, you have a cross-border, and then you have playoffs, making all games super important and very competitive. This is the way to go. It's economies of scale. You don't need to have like 3 VR system, you need to have 1. You can especially influence as well refereeing that the referees from Estonia can be officiating in Latvia, Lithuanians traveling to Estonia. So it's making it product more appealing. It's also not about only the level, because the level will be higher of the games. The average level of the game will be higher. You're doing this by calculating the club indexes and the average index for all the games. Then you create a single product. You put the single product in one platform, 400 plus games in 3 languages with the same graphics, with the pre-game shows, because you can now raise more funds to do this content. You can film broadcast to create 3 levels of broadcasting with 8 cameras, 6 cameras, 4 cameras, and then you create a package that would be interesting not only for the fans but maybe for the sponsors and maybe for the broadcasters.
And how do you think the people of Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia would react to it? Traditionalists, do you think they'd be against it?
I think it's always difficult to change the people's habits, and but I think there were a lot of skepticism about Champions League new format as well. So, but now it's there. And I remember people reading how people were complaining about the changes that goalkeepers could take the ball from their defenders in their hands. There was a massive, I guess, after 1992. But it's happened, and then everybody is okay. The same with the VR, the same with the semi-goal. So it's an innovative thing. But I think as long as we play and we deliver quality and interesting content, people would love it. Why not? Because we experienced last year RFS, actually this summer RFS placed against Estonian champion Levadia 4 buses of the fans came to Tallinn, took the bar, made a march to the stadium. There was a nice atmosphere stadium. We can have it locally every season with the domestic tourism, promoting the cities, promoting the development of infrastructure, because this league, it's a very powerful also lobbying tool. Imagine it's 30 clubs around Baltic states, 6 million people population, local tourism. By the way, like a Denmark market, I always compare, well, for example, Danish market, because it's 6 million people market, but the local domestic TV deal is 50 something million. Of course, we will not be able to replicate this. It's infrastructure, it's a purchasing power. There's like 100 factors that influence that, but 5%, 10% of this commercial potential is here. And I understood it some time ago, and I'm lobbying this. I want it to happen because it will help our national team, it will help our youth teams, it will help our clubs, and by the end of the day, for the fans, it's much more interesting for the fans.
Maksim, thanks so much for speaking to us today.
Thank you, Dean.
Well, Paul, it certainly was an enlightening interview with Maksim. It's great that he spoke so openly. What stood out to you from that interview?
Yeah, as you say, it's really nice to hear someone in a position like that talk in such a frank and down-to-earth way. I've got to say, I've got Dancing Queen in my head. I'm not sure I'm going to get that out. That was playing in the background, right, where you were interviewing him.
So honestly, we were walking around Riga looking for a good place to do that interview, and we found a bar that was fairly quiet. We just about managed to get them to turn the strobe lights off, which you can imagine what that would have been like for the video, but did have to put up with some light music in the background.
I think it added to the whole thing. It added to how informal it all seemed and how frank and honest that exchange was, which I loved to hear. But I think the thing that really did come through was the talk about the Baltic League, and his points in that were I thought really interesting, that he addressed the potential concerns and the reasons he has for thinking it's the right thing. I think they were fascinating.
Well, Maksims has kindly sent us the presentation for the Baltic League. So we're going to take a quick break in just a second, and then we're going to come back and talk through the format, the pros, the cons, and whether it could realistically happen. But first, before we go for a break, did you know that 19 out of 20 listeners to our podcast do not support the show on Patreon? Now, let us say, first of all, we understand that there's so much to pay out for these days. But the reality for us is that if we could get that number down to just 18 out of 20, it would be transformative for this podcast and go a long way to securing its long-term future.
Yeah, it would allow us to make more episodes, interview more guests, and take people virtually all the way across Europe and beyond. So if anyone is able to support us for just a €5 a month, please do that at patreon.com/sweeperpod. And remember, if you do sign up for an annual subscription, you get 10% off.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, time for a quick break, and then we'll be back to dissect the Baltic League. Hello and welcome back to The Sweeper, in which we'll be explaining the proposal for the Baltic League and talking about the Latvian Cup final and all of its associated drama. So let's dive straight into it. How does it work, this proposal for a Baltic League? Well, if you're watching the video version of this podcast on YouTube or Spotify, there'll be slides from the presentation so you can get a visual explanation of the proposal. But otherwise, we'll do an audio explanation for everyone else too, of course. There are 3 stages in the proposed Baltic League pool: domestic, cross-border, and playoffs. In the first stage, it's kept within each country's domestic league. So each team plays every team in their current national league, home and away. That's a total of 18 games each and 270 games overall. But the second phase is where it gets interesting for us. This is where the table, after that regular season, will split off into a top 4 and a bottom 6. In the bottom 6, the teams remain against domestic opponents. They play home and away against the clubs in their own division. That's 10 games each. And within that bottom 6, the first and second place will qualify for a European playoff. We'll go into that later. The 5th will finish in the relegation playoff place, and the 6th will be automatically relegated. But the bit that we're obviously interested in
Yeah.
is the cross-border bit.
This is a bit, right? So far, all we've really got is a league. It makes a lot of sense,
Yes.
but it's like, we've seen leagues before. This is the bit that I'm interested in. How do we do the
Yeah.
cross-border part?
So here's how it works. So each club will only play against the 8 clubs from the other country, or both countries rather. So for example, each Latvian team would only play against the top 4 in Estonia and Lithuania. So Riga FC at this point would not be playing any other Latvian clubs. And that would be a total of 16 games in total per team, because it's also home and away. But interestingly, for completeness, the clubs would bring the points they earned against the other top 4 clubs in their own country into the league table.
Yeah,
So for example, Riga FC and RFS from the first stage of the season, those points would carry over into the second phase.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, that feels kind of unfair, doesn't it? That like you might have beaten teams and then you see them sort of going above you, but you haven't actually had a chance to remedy that. That sounds very logical so far.
Yeah, I think so too. But the interesting thing about this is that they stay within their own league table to ensure that the European spots are spread properly across the 3 countries, because you don't want to create some kind of imbalance where, for example, it's only the Latvian teams or the Lithuanian teams qualifying for the different competitions. And especially because at the moment, I think Latvia is considerably above Lithuania, and Estonia is the worst ranked of the 3 within the UEFA coefficient ranking. That could create an imbalance with the European spots. So I think that is very clever. Lastly, we come to the 3rd phase, where there are these sort of high stakes end of season clashes. So you've got a relegation playoff between the second bottom team in the bottom 6, and they will play against the second placed second tier team in their own country. So for example, if Meta are in 9th place in Latvia, they would play against maybe Riga Mariners if they finish second in Latvia's second division. So that ensures it's not a closed shop, which we also like. You can be promoted into the Baltic League. And then there are also within each country, there is a European playoff. So if you finished in the bottom 2 in the top half, or the top 2 in the bottom half, you go into a sort of semi-finals. And that kind of works a bit like the playoffs in England, rather, where 3rd plays 6th, 4th plays 5th, and then you go through to a final. And that determines the winner of the last European place.
I like it. I mean, I like it. I suppose what this system is doing is providing, obviously, a higher level of competitiveness, maybe, but also giving these like showpiece matches. There's more big matches here, right? And I can imagine there being quite a big demand for watching those games, because that does seem to be the point, isn't it? To kind of stimulate some bigger occasions for these countries.
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe I understand why in the proposal the bottom half is not a Baltic League, because I think maybe the interest in, let's say, Tallinna Kalev against, let's use the example of Meta again, might have limited interest, but like the biggest club in Estonia at the moment, that's Flora Tallinn, against the biggest club in Latvia, the champions Riga FC. I think that is a bit more of a blockbuster clash by Baltic standards. There are obviously other pros and cons of this. What do you think some of the other pros might be, Paul, that might allow them to sort of grow as a collective?
Well, I think Maksim's alluded to this, didn't he? That if you, as a unit, they are stronger. You know, as a unit, they represent more people. There is just simply put a bigger population base, a bigger kind of a bigger power base to that group. So I guess it is that if they join together, they've got a better chance to attract kind of commercial opportunities and sponsorships and big things like that.
I think also player development is a big thing, because one of the things that Maksim said, which I found really interesting, is that Latvia is Europe's youngest league. And he means in terms of the average player age, it's 23 years and I'm not sure what it is. It might be 23.7 years or something. But those players will be playing then against better quality opposition, and it's going to be a better platform for developing young players. On the flip side, the thing that I don't like about this, just from a competition point of view, is that it doesn't conclude with a definitive Baltic champion. Yeah. So you can finish top in your own country, but there's no definitive I'm the champion of the Baltics. And I do also understand this, because if you look at the number of games that are already taking place across these various phases, it does make it quite difficult to then suggest extra games on top of that.
It does, but I have the same thing. I think it's something about any tournament where there isn't one definitive winner always feels to me like there's something missing there. And it could be quite a big occasion, could it not? Like, you know, there's obviously a lot of pride at stake between those countries. Like, it does feel like one showpiece finale is maybe missing there. But again, as you say, I understand why it is missing.
Perhaps some of the other cons would include the languages. I guess they'd have to do it all in English, because these are not particularly similar languages. So I guess they would have to find a common one. So coverage is one thing that could be difficult or a challenge. Bureaucracy as well. Obviously, this would be quite groundbreaking. Interestingly, not for the Baltics, where there is already a women's Baltic League, but in the men's game, this would obviously be a first within Europe, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. I wondered about costs, but maybe in that part of the world, the distances and the costs of travelling them are not too great. But I'm imagining these journeys are bigger than their domestic journeys. So is that adding a level of cost, which I don't know who covers that? Is that part of the Baltic League's general thing to have to cover it?
Probably within Air Baltic, with the airline, you'd probably be able to get, say, from Lithuania, which is the southernmost of the three countries, to Estonia relatively quickly. Honestly, I got a bus from Vilnius to Riga, and it was only 4 hours. So I suppose by the time you get on a plane and you get to the airport, it's not maybe that different.
Yeah, and I suppose 4 hours is no huge thing, and that's part of the reason, isn't it? These countries are very close together, and it makes a lot of sense, I suppose, that that's not going to be a problem.
We'll conclude the Baltic League segment with this. It seems at the moment that the feeling or the pushback is coming from other leagues, in particular Estonia. So I think it is relatively unlikely that we would see this. But you personally, Paul, would you want to see this? Do you think, because there are good traditions in football that we want to keep, but then also fresh thinking sometimes is a good thing. And I think for three leagues that are struggling, we've seen how many bankruptcies there have been in Latvia. What do we think?
My instinct is to be a bit negative about this stuff, but actually that was why it was really useful to hear Maksim's explaining it, and from the position of someone who is, very well placed to say this would give more opportunity to break out of what does seem to be a slightly difficult cycle that these leagues find themselves in, where they're not necessarily able to thrive, and maybe the gap is growing between them and some other European nations. I'm quite pro now, actually, to be honest.
Me too. I think it's a really clever proposal. Obviously, every proposal has drawbacks, but we certainly would love to see it. I think we'll leave the Baltic League there, and we'll move on to the Latvian Cup final, because that had plenty of interesting narratives. That was last night at the time of recording, Wednesday, the 29th of October. The thing that struck me about this, Paul, was that the stadium was very poorly attended. And as soon as I went into the stadium, I thought, wow, this is empty. Of the three stands around the sides at the Skonto Stadium in Riga, only one was occupied. And according to Baltic Football News, the stadium was 14% full, 1,043 in attendance out of a possible 7,300 capacity.
How can the stadium be only 14% full for a cup final?
Yeah, well, I guess there are several reasons. You've got the weather and the fact that football is not exactly the most popular sport in Latvia. But there is another reason for the low interest, which I wasn't aware of coming in to this. And it makes for, unfortunately, low Latvian football interest, but a good podcast segment. So at least we've got that going for us. Basically, there is an unofficial multi-club ownership structure in Latvian football involving Riga FC and Auda FK, who were the two opponents in this final. Now, it's not official, but they are understood to be the same ownership in reality rather than on paper. And what this means, basically, let me try and break this down. The owner of Riga FC is Sergei Lomakin. Now, he also owns Paphos, who we've talked about on the pod, the Champions League debutants, and a second division club in Moscow, Rodina Moscow. He's not the owner on paper of Auda, but Auda also has a Russian owner. Now, there are no proven links or anything like that, but it is more understood to be a behavioural pattern over the last few years that has strongly suggested that there is a big cooperation between the two clubs. And these include things like sharing not only a stadium, but also a training ground, which is highly unusual. And also there have been over 20 player movements, either on loan or permanently, between the teams since 2022.
Wow, God, that is a significant amount of movement. Doesn't it? Surely this leaves them absolutely ripe for allegations of corruption, right? If the two teams meet, isn't there always a chance they could collude a result in this scenario?
Yeah, you might think that, because if you look at the last three league games between them, well, in the last one, Riga beat Auda 6-0, and over the last three games combined, I think it's something like, was it 12 goals to 2 or something like that? I can't remember exactly, but very big wins. And so this was the discussion in the lead up to the final. Is this really a competitive final? And most interestingly, would the players on loan at Auda be able to play against their parent club? Because some of Auda's best players, including their captain, are on loan from Riga at the moment. Now, they haven't been able to play against Riga in the league, but because this is the cup, it's a different competition, they were able to play. And even the guys at Baltic Football News weren't aware of this until we got in the stadium, looked at the team sheet and saw that, oh, yeah, the Riga players are playing. So there was that, which I guess makes it good from a competitive point of view. And on the pitch, the tackles were flying in. The challenges were absolutely flying in. It was really one of the most aggressive football matches I have ever seen. So any kind of hint of a lack of competitiveness was quickly dismissed, not only by what was happening on the pitch, but by the end result, because Riga were very much the heavy favourites for this. They were crowned champions just at the weekend. Auda had to win to get European football, and Auda did win. But it's not necessarily the fact they won, but how they won. So let me take you through the game a little bit. It was the first 20 minutes were dead boring, right? The first 20 minutes, I don't want to go to every country, every game we go to say it was interesting. It was really boring, the first 20 minutes. But in the 21st minute, a player called Jackson opened the scoring for Auda. Guess which club he moved to Auda from?
I think I've got a good chance here. Was it perhaps Riga FC?
It certainly was, yeah. Auda were ahead for about 15 minutes, and then a little bit before half-time, a free kick was played into the box. It was flicked on and headed home. It was actually a very, very nice goal, a bullet header. So 1-1 at the break. But things really, really came alive in the second half. I really enjoyed that. Culminating in the 77th minute, where Riga were caught in possession. There was a lightning counter. It was 3-on-2. The ball was played out to the right to a player called Edward Datskowicz, and he scored a goal. It was sort of one of those where the keeper was a little bit wrong-footed, and the ball kind of rolled across the face of goal into the corner, but it nestled in the far corner. He went absolutely berserk. It was kind of like, not quite like Adebayor against Arsenal, but he ran like half the length of the pitch, hugged the coach, went really mad. Now, Paul, Guess which club he is currently on loan
No.
at Auda from?
He's on
Yeah.
loan from Riga FC.
Yeah. According to Baltic Football News, he is on loan, yeah.
But surely that is not going to be a particularly popular thing that he's just celebrating in the faces of effectively his teammates, right?
Oh, you haven't seen the last of it yet. So those were the celebrations on the pitch after the goal. He then ran over to the crowd and he cupped his hands behind his ears. So, he really, and what was really interesting is after and before that, he's a very tricky winger. He's a very good player, actually, Daskovits. The Riga players were like telling him to get up and, stop. He's diving, all of this kind of thing. I don't think he was, to be honest. He was on the end of a few really heavy challenges. But then it got even more dramatic in stoppage time because first of all, Auda had a penalty. It was then ruled out by VAR. Down the other end, Riga had a big chance, and then the final whistle blew. And by the time the final whistle blew, I was down pitch side, and I was taking photos of the Riga fans and the Auda fans. And I was by the Auda fans when the final whistle went. And Daskovits, there'll be a video. We'll throw it up on screen if you're watching the video version of the pod now. But Daskovits came running over to the fans, wildly celebrating. And the celebrations afterwards are great as well. But he was clearly super pumped and motivated to put in a show against this team that didn't want him. So Auda won the cup, but there's this whole narrative behind it of this weird connection between the teams.
It's super weird, isn't it? And if the loan just ends and Daskovits goes back, is he going to have to slink into the dressing room in pre-season, sort of, hi guys, sorry.
I think the feeling from the guys at BFN was that he won't be going back now. I don't know whether that was predetermined before that game, but certainly it's the case after it. So Auda will now go into the UEFA Conference League qualifying rounds. It's only their second ever trophy. So despite all of this narrative about the connection between the clubs, it was the underdog that came out on top. And we've been to see several cup finals now in Austria, in Belgium, and Gibraltar. It's the first time we've ever seen an underdog win. So that's always nice.
Yeah. No, I always love seeing an underdog win. And even if this relationship between these two clubs seems really odd, to be honest, as you're outlining it, I'm thinking this is just really strange. But obviously for the fans of that club, that's not the issue. They're just going to be very happy about it and be exciting to see how they do in Europe.
All right, I think it is about time, Paul, for our end of episode game on the spot in just a second. But first, some quick info about our next episodes. The next regular pod will be out on Wednesday, the 12th of November. We've got some great underdog tales from South America. And very interestingly, I think, some more info on the OFC Pro League because we attended the soft launch event online the other day. So we've got some great content to bring you from that.
Yes, and if you want more from us before then, we've got a Patreon episode on November the 5th, and that will have some more on the 3 Baltic Leagues and also our usual weird and wonderful array of stories from around the world.
Let's conclude the episode with On the Spot then. Paul is 2-0 up from the last episode. Do you want to quickly recap for people how this works?
Yeah, I love that you said I'm 2-0 up as if basically I've played my game in hand here. So I've had one go at this game, you've had 0. So this is your chance to level up.
It is 2-0, Paul. It is 2-0.
It is 2-0. I've been telling everyone that. Yeah, no asterisk here. It's just 2-0. So the game works like this. There are 5 categories of increasing difficulty: continent, country, city, club, and player. So in this case, Lee is going to have to choose which one he feels most comfortable with, in the knowledge that if he gives a continent, that's 1 point, a country 2, a city 3, a club 4, and a player 5. I then name something in that category. He has to give me one fact about it. So, Lee, how attacking are you going to be on this occasion? Are you going to take on a player, or are you going to play it safe?
I am in a high-risk mood today, Paul, so I'm going to go for 4, a club. Give me my club, please.
Your club, Lee, is Enyimba. All you need to do is tell me where they're from. I think if you tell me where they're from, if you can give me their nickname as well, then my God, I'll be impressed. But if you can just tell me
Nigerian?
Yeah, they are Nigerian.
They aren't they the club that had a massive player turnover this summer, where I think didn't they sell like 19 players this summer, and now they were almost flirting with relegation last season, despite being Nigeria's most successful team.
Oh, there you go. That's more than worth the points. Yeah, that's all absolutely true. Their, I believe their president, or maybe director of football president, is Wankwo Kanu. You remember Kanu, the sort of famous legendary player? And you're right. They had a point where I think they released 22 players on the same day, and people were really worried the club might be collapsing. And their nickname is the People's Elephant, which I love as well.
Well, there you go. A 4-2 lead. Paul, you're going to have to come from behind next time. We'll leave it there today, guys. We'll see you soon.